Okay, Robert, what do we make of Trump's second impeachment?
So I think, to me, holding a trial for the president, I think the impeachment is unconstitutional itself, but I think that the holding a trial would be patently unconstitutional. So Dershowitz has the same opinion on this. Turley has the same opinion on this. Other professors, at least in the past, did. We'll see how many of them are willing to voice it on Trump's behest or behalf now. The first of all, the Constitution is clear. You can only impeach someone for who is holding an office, and the Constitution says this twice. And so the idea that they can hold a trial for someone who's not holding office is not within their constitutional power. And the Constitution says the impeachment power extends only to these circumstances, and one of them is not ex-office holders. So that's problem number one, and why it's unconstitutional. Problem number two is that it's a patent bill of attainder. So the legislatures of Britain, the Parliament of Britain, used to try to criminally punish and prosecute people themselves, independent of the judicial process. This was hated by the colonists. So one of the things included in the original Constitution, even before the Bill of Rights, was there can be no bill of attainders, period. What that means is the legislature can't go around punishing people as individuals, period. They have no power of punishment over a person, period. Their only power of punishment is removal from office. That's all. And it's from the federal office. So there's a power of expulsion in the cases of members of House or the members of the Senate. And there's powers of impeachment involving the judiciary and the members of the executive branch. There is no power to punish otherwise. In fact, it's a patent constitutional violation. So clearly, Donald Trump, when no longer president, is a bill of attainder within the meaning of that constitutional provision, and as such is a second violation of the Constitution. The third is that this is a violation of the First Amendment, because they're to punish Trump for his speech. And the First Amendment applies to any governmental action by any governmental body at any time. This includes congressional subpoenas, or any other congressional enforced action, which cases to punish the president, in particular, deprive him of the ability to future office. That power only exists. It's in the, as Dershowitz noted, it says you can remove an officer and bar them from future office. It doesn't say remove them from office or disbar them from future office, as if the latter could be a power for the former. It's conjunctive. So they're trying to punish him for his speech. And it's clearly constitutionally protected speech, as both Dershowitz and Turley have pointed out. But others that have looked at it, it's patently obvious that it is. Because he gave a speech where he said, in order for speech to be criminal, to be within true threats, or imminent incitement, it has to expressly call for unlawful behavior that can imminently occur, and that you seek to imminently occur. Unless it has all of those components, it's constitutionally protected speech. The seminal case in this regard is Brandenburg v. Ohio, unanimous decision, where the Supreme Court said calling Klansmen, talking to other Klansmen, calling for physical violence against the neighboring African-American community was constitutionally protected speech, because it did not have the imminent component. In Trump's case, he never called for any unlawful action of any type, just the opposite. He called for peaceful protesting, patriotic protesting. That's not calling for illicit action. So they have no express call for illicit action, number one. Number two, it could not have been imminent, because the people Trump was talking to were 45-minute walk away from the Capitol. And in fact, the Capitol breach began to occur while he was still speaking. So the speech couldn't have caused the riot, and so there couldn't be imminent incitement, period, just as a matter of geographic and temporal reality. And then third, we do know, as a matter of but-for causation, that the speech had nothing to do with the raid. The people who raided the Capitol had planned it in advance. And were doing it while the speech was ongoing, while people from Trump's rally could not get there to stop them from doing so. Were done so often with the facilitation and enabled by police action and FBI action, in the sense of what they chose to do or not do, and warnings given, and policing tactics and security tactics taken. And now we know, of course, there were other BLM, Antifa types involved in it, facilitated it. One has now been charged. One who was celebrated by CNN as an independent reporter. CNN put him on there. And of course, now he was calling for burning down the Capitol. That's an example of illicit incitement, is what that BLM guy is being charged with. Because while they're in the Capitol, he's encouraging them to do criminally illicit acts right there and then. That's an express call for illicit action that has the imminent capacity to occur. Though it's far from clear that hardly any of them were inclined to do so, because I don't know if you saw the video with the Vikings guy. It turned out part of his defense may be right. It appears he was escorted in with the Capitol Police. And they're all sitting around chilling out. And he's like, hey, everybody be cool. And he's like, yeah, we're cool. And yeah, we don't want to cause any problems. And can you leave the Senate? Yeah, we'll leave here in just a second, dude. I was like, I mean, this would be like if the Big Lebowski organized the Capitol Hill riot. I mean, this is not a real Capitol Hill. This is not a coup. This is not an insurrection. There was a small group of QAnon and other people who try to cause problems, but the bulk of the crowd was just, walking between the lines, looking at the pretty art, or the Vikings guy who just wanted to sit up on the Capitol sit up on the Senate chair for a little while. Well, and wrote a bland statement about, hey, justice is coming, and that's what they're going to try to prosecute him for. That's not a sign. Does anybody really think that guy wanted or committed imminent criminal incitement? He's clearly been duped by Q. He calls himself the Q shaman. But by no means is there any evidence of imminent violence in his conduct, at least.
No, there were some videos that were showing, actually, I mean, for what they're worth, the media doesn't play them as much as they might otherwise, but of supporters telling people to stop breaking windows, where you saw a guy smashing a window. And so for anybody who doesn't appreciate this, Trump has been impeached on, I believe it was called inciting an insurrection. Those were the formal charges. How long did it take them to draft and approve those second impeachment charges?
I think it was like 12 hours total. Because first they try to invoke the 25th. These same people that pretended that the reason why they had to vote the way they did on the election contest is because they're deep believers in the Constitution, a Constitution they mostly ignored in its history and its application in that precise electoral contest area. Were the same people that suddenly wanted to invoke the 25th Amendment to remove a president who's clearly not incapacitated. So it's a joke that these people were trying to enforce the Constitution at any time. It's a crock. And their attempts to gaslight the world otherwise is just ludicrous. They're like Jack Dorsey of Twitter and Zuckerberg with Facebook, sitting there thinking the world wants us to do this because their little cocktail party, their little martini get together said so, on maybe a martinis via Zoom these days. But they had no idea that this is not where the ordinary world is, and they recognize nonsense when they see it. That's why legitimate public opinion polls, not the fake ones that are trying to gaslight people, show Trump doing just as well as he was before. They're not accepting all this. Like even the NBC poll said, how serious is this? Does this rank up there with 9/11? Does this rank up there with the assassination of President Kennedy? And people are like, no. Only the hardcore lefties on Twitter, the AOC fans of the world, thought this ranked as anything serious. They see the Viking guy and they're like, not good. The Viking guy's sitting in the chair, but no, I'm not going to have a heart attack over it.
And incidentally, CNN, who initially reported that there was that authorities or somebody had confirmed that there was an intent to kidnap and do worse, they walked that back in a piece that nobody's going to see. And my brother said
that's because the Justice Department leaked out some nonsense because of how politicized they are, and the FBI rebutted it within an hour. Because the FBI is investigating in this. So what they're finding is there are some QAnon types, there are some Boogaloo Boy types, some Antifa BLM types, and that basically they were the ones orchestrating this, trying to use the cover of a rally to try to break into the Capitol. And there was a few of the QAnon types who really thought they were working for the government, that the military and police were secretly on their side, and that they were being deputized by their Q oaths to go in there and operate. And that's the reason why that poor woman died. It's the reason why other people died there that day. So it's a tragic event, stupid violence, but by no means was it. The insurrection language comes from way back after the Civil War, wanting to criminalize someone trying to literally restart the Civil War. It was not meant to apply to political speech. And reinvoking the insurrection language, reinvoking the sedition language, it's always been misapplied to politically dissident speech. It's almost never been applied, once or twice to actual terrorists. But otherwise, it's being misused and abused, and they're using it as a pretext for new speech codes and new monitoring and new surveillance and Patriot Act on steroids 2.0, where they're going to label people domestic terrorists simply if you showed up at a MAGA rally. I mean, that's where they're trying to go.
We're seeing it already. It is Orwellian 1984 rubbish, for lack of a better word. Now, Alan Eaton said at Viva, Congress has impeached someone out of office, William Belknap, Navy Secretary.
Yes, but the Senate acquitted him on the legal, not because he was innocent of the facts, but because legally they said they had no jurisdiction to try him after he was out of office. So the only precedent on this is the acquittal of Belknap. That's a cabinet official, and that's the only one I know of. And there's some arguments about whether there should be a different. Generally, it was supposed to be harder to impeach the president than either a judge or a cabinet official, but that's another matter historically. But again, this is a bill of attainder. If you can say simply if you've ever held federal office, we now have the power to bar you from ever running for office. That is never what an impeachment has ever meant historically through the entire history going back to the English age. So this is a radical departure from the Constitution, a radical violation of its core principles. And the fact that it's being done in violation of the First Amendment and free speech makes it even more offensive. And arguably, it's a violation of due process under the Fifth Amendment because there's been no hearings, no opportunity to contest evidence, nothing else. I think the president may bring suit in federal court to challenge the entire trial. We'll see. Some senators are realizing that this is backfiring. Mitch McConnell and his continued cluelessness and his in the turtle senility in his last term he really thought that if he leaked that 30 or 40 House members were going and that he himself was thinking about saying yes to impeachment, that he was going to get Nixon level 1974 numbers. And instead, he only got 10. And there are 10 whose days are short. Over a majority of them won't even be back next term. Including, and it'll be a beautiful, righteous thing to witness, the end of the Cheney family to go along with the end of the Bush family when Cheney gets whipped in Wyoming in 2022. But because of that, McConnell all of a sudden, right after that, Tim Scott comes out and says, it's not such a good idea for us to do impeachment. Lindsey Graham comes out and says, we should just dismiss this. This doesn't look so good. Rand Paul's like, this is going to break up the party. So McConnell is completely losing power. He completely misread the environment. And the establishment's goal to ruin Trump is already dying on the vine. But the fact that we have one more attempt to violate the Constitution in the name of going after Trump is one more embarrassment of the attacks on Trump in the Trump era.
You could still see me, Robert, right? Someone said that they couldn't see or hear me.
Oh, I can.
Okay, perfect. I had another question about the impeachment. It was, there's no strategic benefit to go to the trial and Trump appears at the trial to testify on his own and send a political message where after Twitter shut him down. It might be his best venue.
It would be a little risky to testify because that's always under penalty of perjury. So why set yourself up for something that somebody can make hay out of? My view would be to challenge it in the courts first, and see if the courts, see if the Senate delays it. I mean, the Senate should do is just dismiss it and be over with it, and recognize they don't have the power. I made a forecast on our locals board, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, where we provide both general and some exclusive content. There's an episode of Hush Hush people can watch to see my full views of what happened on Capitol Hill, and the rest. But if you deeper, I think that in terms of the approach to be taken is better that they move to dismiss than partake and participate. I did predict on the locals board that if Biden was politically smart, it would be like Biden to want to make a grandstanding moment and say, let's drop at his inauguration on Wednesday, say, let's move forward. It's amazing. You do something crazy unconstitutional, your party does, and then you show your unifying gesture just by not torturing the Constitution some more. But it would be politically smart for him to do. It's politically not good for him to have the Senate consumed for weeks, maybe months, with an impeachment proceeding while he's trying to get any legislation through. I mean, it's the political ineptitude here is off the charts. It's because of how greatly they fear Trump. They fear that Trump will come back in 2024, and they're trying to prohibit that. The problem is if it's unconstitutional and the Supreme Court does its job, always a big risk, then it won't matter because the Supreme Court will say, no, the Senate couldn't do that. And so he can run anyway. So why? And then you've made Trump a double martyr. You illicitly impeached him, and then you illicitly tried to bar him from office. You give him even more political juice.
Well, and I'll read this from Cleopatra. Says, my last chat just to aggravate the liberals who have infiltrated. So the Senate cannot vote to impeach due to no precedent. They cannot vote to impeach because it would be unconstitutional. The only precedent is anybody who's been...
And there is no, contrary to what people have said, there's a majority vote in the Senate that said they could, but that's not how impeachment proceedings work legally. It's what the vote on a conviction or acquittal is. And the acquittal took place because enough senators said, no, we do not have the jurisdiction to try someone after impeachment is gone. I mean, when you have Turley and Dershowitz both on the left say this is obvious, I mean, they're like, come on. I mean, that gives you an idea for what an honest constitutional analysis. It's never been done in my knowledge anywhere in history that someone has been with comparable impeachment provisions.
I want to highlight the two things that I find to be the most shocking about this from an outsider perspective is how quickly it took them to draft and approve impeachment articles from what I understand, it took months if people have even gotten COVID relief in the first place. So you can get this done within 3 days, but when people are out of work and shut down and they can't even get basic subsidies, it takes months to do that. That was my first thing, which I found offensive as an outsider. The second thing, from what I understand, if hypothetically Trump is successfully impeached and confirmed by the Senate, it's not just that he can't run for office again, which would be one victory. From what I understand, his security detail would also be removed.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah,
and so I mean that's
a little bit up in the air. It can be grounds to deny him. The Secret Service can provide, like the Secret Service provides protection for people who are just presidential candidates, for example, who are not even federal office holders, for family members of elected officials. So they have broad authority, but it can be they don't have to provide it, is the interpretation if he's impeached.
Yeah, I thought that was the most disgusting of the potential, call it objectives in pursuing impeachment, is to A, just persecute to the end, B, try to have it so that he can't run for office again, and then C, try to have it so that after all the vilification, his Secret Service detail is eliminated because of the impeachment. I thought that's what I found to be the most distasteful potential outcome.
And the leading foreign policy publication called Foreign Policy by the national security establishment just called for, quote, the elimination of populist adversaries like Trump. And, that language surely doesn't help. It's interesting that the people who are using that language are attacking the president for calling for a peaceful, patriotic rally. I mean, it shows the gap. It's accusation through
confession through projection. Yeah, I don't think there's any question. I have my own theories, but I'm thoroughly convinced social media, in blocking and doing what they're doing, purging, every fear hides a wish. David Mamet. We fear this, but my goodness, if it happened, it would give us great justification to impose further purging. It would give the government great justification to impose further strict laws. We can criminalize, qualify as insurrection just based on political affiliation, and there goes your right to protest, just like that.
And it's designed, I think, to trigger a bad reaction in the public that can be then used to justify further crackdowns.
Oh yeah, and by the way, I forgot to mention one thing. 12,000 people watching. Hit the thumbs up button. You can also drop a comment, but hit the thumbs up button so we can see it go from 3.2 thousand to 6,000 in 30 seconds.